Welcome to my podcast, Not Just CAD. My name is Sean Bryant, and I'm an Autodesk Expert Elite who loves CAD, BIM, technology, and loads of other not just CAD stuff. Not Just CAD is the social media outlet of CAD FM consultants, and you can check out the Not Just CAD blog at www.cadfmconsult.com. Today, our guests are the dynamic duo of Shelby Smith and Kristina Youngblut. Both are recent inductees to the Autodesk Expert Elite program, and both are working closely with AUGI, who, as their name on LinkedIn suggests, is the world's largest CAD and BIM user group. I met Shelby and Kristina face-to-face for the first time last November at Autodesk University in Las Vegas. So thank you for joining me today and giving up your valuable time. I know with the time differences, you're both in your working day right now. I'm not. And just explain in your own words who you both are, where you're from in the world as well, letting our listeners know which part of the world you come from, including country for international listeners, and just give us a brief heads up on what you do for AUGI as well. That'd be interesting.
Hi, my name is Kristina Youngblut. I work for CIMA Plus. I live in Ontario, Canada. I have been part of AUGI for the last year, which I was recently added as a board of director and took on the role as secretary as well. AUGI has been a big part of my career, being able to find support and information related to products and services that I use. But more recently, I've put a lot of my effort into AUGICon 24, which is happening at the end of April. So that's where my focus with AUGI is at the moment, getting it planned, getting all the presenters and everything set up. I'm also a BIM coordinator / BIM manager, depending on the project that has required me at my company. And through all of these roles and everything, I've just very excited for like the next year and bit of my growth and development, especially with AUGI and with Autodesk Expert Elite program.
Go for it, Shelby. You're next.
Thanks. I'm Shelby, and I am a Autodesk CIM Manager for my company, JMT. We are located all up and down the East Coast, but I live in York, Pennsylvania, here in the United States. I have recently been appointed to the position of advisory member to AUGI, which I am very honored to be a part of. That has been a recent transition that I just picked up that role back in December, I think was the official first meeting that I had joined with them. And as Kristina said, we're looking forward to AUGICon, which is happening here in the spring. And we are looking forward to seeing how else we can help and reach out to our worldwide community of Autodesk and software users, including Bentley too.
Excellent. That sounds great. So as our listeners are aware now, obviously we're kind of going international today. We've got me in the UK with the croaky voice. We've got Shelby, obviously in Pennsylvania in the US, and we've got Kristina over in Canada as well. So it's all very international. Now, one of the things that I was many, many years ago, I was a civil and structural engineering technician. I don't even know if that title exists anymore, but back in the day, that's how I started out in civil and structural engineering. Now, one of the things that happened to me was if somebody had said to me back then, my career was doing what I do now, I would have probably laughed a lot and said, you're kidding, right? But I love what I do now. I never thought I'd be in a position where my career satisfaction is all about partnering with people and helping to empower others in their industries. Now, obviously, you two are now empowering people as expert elites. And that was the great thing about meeting you guys in Las Vegas at Autodesk University last November. And you're both working in highly technical, what I call AEC type roles. And with your career choices and how you've moved through your careers, what sort of light bulb moment made you realize that you wanted to be in the career that you're in?
Oh, wow. Actually, I even know the moment this happened. Because
Go for it,
it was
Kristina.
pretty,
Let us
yeah,
know.
it was pretty significant. Yeah. So I was going to school for architecture. My plan ever since I never thought I would do anything else. Architecture since I was itty bitty. My parents would even be like, annoyingly, would say this is what I wanted to do. But when I hit school, you know, you're going through the programs. I started in college. So in Canada, you can do college and university. It's different types of degrees and masters and bachelors and stuff like that. So, but it's recommended you start your college because then it makes the university portion smaller and more streamlined into your specific or your whatever you're going to go into. But I ended up with a co-op as my last in my last semester, which was for a content aggregator. And this is somebody who takes content and makes it available to people online. So mine was focused on the AAC manufactured products. And I walked into this role. My manager quit the day that I started, not because I was coming there. They got a better job. I ended up taking over that role. And things just started kind of coming to place. I didn't realize that the knowledge I had, nobody else contained. And I was like, but like, this is just so easy to do. Why don't you guys just do this? So I picked up the CAD manager role as a co-op student in my first 2 or 3 days. So it was like, okay, there's kind of something here. I kept going, finished my co-op, go back to school to finish. But the guy who owned the company, he kept me employed after my co-op into school and gave me a job right out of school. So I was like, okay, well, this is easy. I'm getting amazing money. I get to do whatever I want. So I continued on with the content aggregation job, but it grew into so much more. So it grew into Revit came out. Revit came out to designers. It was really kind of like on the back burner. Autodesk had only just purchased it a couple of years before. So about 2006, somebody was like, hey, can you do Revit? And I was like, no, but I'll figure it out. Can't be that hard. Okay, that was the first issue. Revit and AutoCAD are not the same thing. They might look the same. They are not. But I picked up the program, was selling products out of that software within like 3 weeks. I was like, okay, there's something here. And it just kept growing. Everything just kind of kept coming on board. And I was just like, oh, well, this makes sense. This is easy to me. And people come to me with problems that's like, that weren't hard to me. And I'd be like, oh, don't worry, we can fix this. No problem. And it just kind of built upon itself. I never really thought I was going to go into this world. It just kind of all started happening slowly. People needed more help. I was available to help. I knew how to find the solutions. I knew how to help them. I can work with people and I can change the way that I teach people. So everybody learns differently. So somebody might need hands-on, somebody might just need you to give them a brief tutorial. And I was able to navigate all of that throughout 20 years of my career. So I went in to be an architect. I came out as a BIM manager, and I would never take back what I've done. I still love architecture. It's still my passion, but I think that's what drives me to help those people and to solve their problems, because you're not just a designer. You know, the BIM services is the IT for the AEC industry, and I love that. So yeah, I've never looked back, and here I am 25 years later.
And you do it well. You do it well.
Thanks.
No, everything we've talked about over the years, yeah, it's your enthusiasm, your passion is so obvious. And obviously, we met for the first time at AU, and yeah, your enthusiasm shone through. Absolutely. So, Shelby, your light bulb moment. What was yours?
I don't know that it was necessarily a light bulb moment for me. So in grade school, they made us, choose a career pathway, and I didn't really know what I wanted to be. I, went through all of the normal things: dentist, doctor. For some reason, I wanted to be an orthodontist at one point as well. Seems very random, but in grade school, like in middle school, I decided I wanted to take drafting, and I don't know what possessed me to do it, but as soon as I got to high school, I was adamant that I wanted to be in drafting. And so I took mechanical drafting. So I did a whole year of hand drafting and then progressed on to a whole year of AutoCAD. And then we did a combination the third year I was in it for engineering drafting. And at that point, I thought I wanted to go in to be a drafter. And it was actually my drafting instructor who said, well, you're also really good at math and you're smart. He's like, I think that engineering would be a really good avenue for you. But I had never met an engineer. I didn't know what they did. It was this foreign concept to me. So he was the one that actually gave me schools to look into and to apply to and to look at. And my parents made like a parent teacher conference. We're like, what is an engineer? What do they do? And so that was kind of what pushed me onto the path. And so I went to Penn State University and I started out as undecided engineering. And it was through my gen ed classes and the things that I figured out I was good at, chemistry not being one of them, that I found my way to civil engineering. And I got my bachelor's of science in civil engineering. And so I came out of school and started in oil and gas. And I worked in that for about a year and a half or so. And immediately from my very first position, I helped create standards and I did all of the software installs and went through all of that because I had that background knowledge that a lot of my peers just did not have. And so I created all the line types and, all of that business. And from that point on, every company that I joined into, even though I was being their engineer, I also was managing all the standards. I was creating all the styles. I was managing all their templates. So being out in the field, I've progressed into a few different companies now, but at my current company, I've played such a heavy role in that. And we've been a primarily Bentley company. And so I kind of have been leading a lot in the Autodesk side of things and letting them know that Autodesk is not the enemy, just because they're used to DOTs setting up the Bentley workspaces and companies having to set up the Autodesk workspaces. No one had ever done that heavy lift for them yet. And so by trying to get everyone more enthusiastic and realize that it's really great software and it's just that they had never set it up before, that I kind of forged my own path here and established myself as a resource. And it wasn't until just January of this year that I moved into our design software department, which we call our DCOE. And I have now fully taken on that role of CIM manager rather than just being a design engineer. But I think having that background in the engineering side is that I really can help assist them in what their designs and projects are, that I've got that background knowledge to help them model and figure out what is the best approach, what are the best tools, how can we set everything up. So I don't know that there was necessarily a light bulb moment, but I think it's wonderful that I've come full circle, that the thing that started me out and I was super excited and passionate about is where I got to end up again. And that's just such a wonderful feeling.
Yeah, I get that completely. And weirdly, Shelby, your background is slightly similar to how I started out. I ended up, I was an engineering technician for a petrochemical company, designing all the reinforced concrete and structural steelwork. And I was one of the youngest guys in the office, and I was surrounded by all of these guys on autopilot to retirement on the drawing board. I was still on the drawing board as well at that point, but I was a lot younger. And the guy in charge of the department said to me, look, there's this thing called AutoCAD that's just come out, and we kind of want you to go and get trained on it so that you can help us out. And basically I was developing all of the standard drawings onto AutoCAD rather than A3 sheets in a folder. And we also, because obviously we were petrochemical, we were running another system called Intergraph, and that did all of our PNID drawings and everything. And I was, like you say, I was the one that had the idea of heavy lifting and working out how we could get AutoCAD to talk to Intergraph, so that all of the piping and instrumentation could then be brought into the 3D AutoCAD and be put onto the structures. And basically I ended up being the CAD manager of that company with 25 people working under me. And like you say, developing all the standards, the templates, the line types, everything. And it was for me, that was basically my sort of rites of passage. And that's why I am where I am now. And I couldn't agree with both of you more. You kind of find a path. That's the only way I can describe it. It's not prescribed for you. And and you find me someone who's followed their exact career path the way they want to. You won't find anybody. There'll always be these little wiggles and deviations, and they build that person. They build that person. And for me, that's kind of really important. And that's kind of why I always ask that question, because it's, I call it a light bulb moment, But if you imagine you've got a dimmer switch and that dimmer switch is slowly brightening the light bulb, that's how your career path goes. Slowly it gets brighter and brighter. And all of a sudden you're kind of there with all the lights on and it's like, I've arrived. I know what I'm doing and I know what I want to do. And for me, I've been running CAD FM now for 21 years. And I was joking with Michelle about it. I said, "Do you realize the company's just turned 20?" And she was like, "You're kidding." It was like, "No, I've been doing this for 21 years. I've been freelance for 21 years." And when I first went freelance, all I was doing was little 3-day AutoCAD courses for a reseller that had to make me redundant. And the boss went, "I can give you 3 days a week training. Are you okay to do that freelance? And I'll pay your invoice at the end of the month." And all of a sudden, my kind of direction was changed, but it was the best directional change I'd ever had. And it taught me to be self-sufficient because my son was 3 months old at the time and I had to have money coming in to pay the mortgage and pay the bills. But also it made me think, how can I make my training better? Also, how can I approach people and see whether they want me to do that training? And I ended up in a local government organization for nearly 9 months on a contract. And I was not only doing the training, I was doing the standards, I was running the CAD committee, I was getting everybody standardized in this entire department. And I suddenly thought to myself, wouldn't it be nice if I could do this for everybody? And that's how it progressed. And then weirdly enough, Autodesk kind of reached out to me, and I was working with a product at the time called FM Desktop. It doesn't exist anymore. Autodesk acquired it, and I was one of only 2 FM Desktop experts in the UK. And that got me my gig at AU 2006. And as they say, the rest is history.
Oh, gosh.
That's where it all kicked in. So, and the other thing that happened with that, obviously with AU, was I became an Expert Elite. Now, one of the things that I loved about AU in November was I was so pleased to see so many more female Expert Elites at AU. Now, that for me is a massive thing because I've always had this belief that we need a proper cross section. And there's a reason for this. I was at AU about 10 years ago, and I think I was sort of in my autopilot mode, getting to go and speak at one of my classes. I joined the queue for the men's room. There was a queue for the men's room, and a couple of female engineers thought it was hilarious and took a picture of it.
Yes.
And they were just joking. "Oh my God, look, there's a queue for the men's room."
Yeah.
Right? Which there always was at AU because it's such a male dominated environment, right? The guy in front of me bad mouthed them and said women shouldn't be in engineering or anywhere near AU. And how I managed to hold myself back from, because obviously I was quite well known at that point, and I thought I could really step in here and just be very angry. And I thought, no, I'm just going to observe, which I did. But that's what got my cogs going. And I've always been an advocate ever since that moment at AU for diversity, equality, inclusion. It is so important to have that cross section. And it does, I don't care what anybody says, there is a men are from Mars, women are from Venus mentality. It's there. You can't escape it. I still get told it now after 15 years of marriage. Okay, it's there, right? Now, obviously being a woman in what is seen as traditionally a male orientated environment must have had its ups and downs for both of you two. Now, I'm really pleased to see more women in AEC. You've obviously got women in BIM as well, run by Becca DeSico. And we're seeing Autodesk with this phenomenal DEI advocacy all the way through everything that Autodesk does. But you're always going to get the usual detractors, right? They're always out there. So what I'd like both of you to do is give me one example of a detractor. Obviously, they will remain nameless for obvious reasons. I don't want legal coming down on me anywhere. But just explain the detractor and what they did and how you reacted to that, and more importantly, made it better.
You want me to go first, Shelby?
Go for it. Go for it, Kristina, if you want to go. That's fine.
So this was actually on prior to me learning Revit. So, a big similarity between all of us. It seems we're big proponents for like standards and templates and, basic foundations of design. So working in content aggregation, still very male dominated because it is still part of the AEC industry, but it's manufacturing. So, it's like its side partner there. So I was developing some parametric technology for AutoCAD prior to parametric solutions being available. I was actually working with Autodesk. They built me a custom API so that I can manipulate AutoCAD outside of the program. And my boss at the time was like, okay, we're just gonna keep this between us. One, it was scientific and research development for a government project, not for a government project, they would pay for it. But we're gonna keep like who's on this project on the download. I'm like, okay, whatever. I was young, I was naive, I didn't really understand what was going on. And so we're in this development and I go to have my first presentation and demonstrate what I'm doing. And I was the only woman, and I'm young 20s. I think I was like 21, 22, sitting in this room of, 50 to 70-year-old white men, not trying to pick on anybody. And I'm talking and I'm presenting this solution to them because I'm trying to get them to buy in. And all of them are like, arguing with me and dismissing the things that I'm saying, even though you're demonstrating it, and they're trying to like talk back and forth, and then all of a sudden they're like, this is wrong. And I luckily enough, I document everything. And I'm like, okay, this is incorrect. Your data is incorrect in my system. And I showed them where all of their files were on their system because they had to give me access to it, demonstrated where all of this content came from. Turned out that it was their architectural team had been screwing up for years. And they just sat there, and it was like 45 minutes that they were trying to like, tear me down, saying I couldn't do what I was trying to demonstrate, smoke and mirroring them. It's like, no, this is all real. This is, and it was a light bulb moment to me, realizing that I was going to be having this issue continuously throughout my career. Like, I'm just sitting here just trying to save you guys time and energy. I'm trying to automate your design and give you guys a solution. You're sitting here attacking me, and I'm the presenter here. But I know it was because I was a very young girl who just showed up in their big giant presentation, big giant meeting, and saying like, here, see what I can do for you. So it was interesting because I didn't realize why my boss at the time said, we're going to keep you kind of on the down low. We don't want people who know who you are, because we were experiencing that. We walked into that room. They shouldn't have seen me as a young girl trying to present. They should have seen me as the expert and the professional that was presenting them a solution that was going to save them millions of dollars, which I ended up doing. And they ended up firing their architectural team. But
there's your solution, right?
But my solution just ended up being, I worked harder. I started reaching out. This was actually before I even knew Autodesk Forms, but I started doing more research into what I was doing. The parametric toolbox wouldn't have been what it was unless people had kept trying to push me down, telling me that I couldn't do it. It's like, fine, hold my beer. I'll show you that I can do this. So how I succeeded was actually just trying to show them up, because I don't like people telling me I can't do something. And it's like, well, I'm not doing anything special, just doing what the software allows me to do. But I kept fighting. And, I showed up to my very first conference. I think it was like an AIA conference. And everybody's listening to me talk. I was the one covering the booth. So I was doing all the presentation. And at the end of it, I had people coming up to me and like, you designed this? Like, you're in charge of all this? I'm like, yeah, I'm the product owner. It's me and a programmer. We built this whole thing. And it started that's when I realized that was where the diversity and inclusion needed to be promoted more, that people needed to realize that women were out there building these solutions. It wasn't just a male dominated industry, but nobody knew who I was. And I understand why my boss at the time wanted to keep me low, because people wouldn't even talk to us if they realized I was the head of the project, which is such a discouraging and like limited way to think of things. But it made me work harder. It made me push through. So, I mean, there was no like actual solution. It was just, it helped build the path that I am on today. I mean, I wouldn't be a BIM manager without having to fight and find solutions for those problems. So
exactly. And what it's done is it's given you another feather in your cap, so to speak, and molded you into what you're doing now.
yeah.
And that's so important. That is so important. And I'm well, one, I'm really glad to hear that you just thought, right, I'm going to fight back. I'm not going to sit here and be downtrodden. That's great. And as far as I'm concerned, more power to your elbow, basically, on that one. That's all I can say. So, Shelby, obviously, I'm sure you've had your fair share of detractors as well. So, an example for you, and one, how you dealt with it, and also, like Kristina, how did it mold you? How did it make you move forward?
So, number one, I just want to say it shouldn't surprise you at all that Kristina would fight back because she's a little spitfire.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, agreed.
her personality alone and her energy just knows, that she's going to fight you back on, putting her down. So that does not surprise me in the least. But for me, I just want to say that my company that I'm currently at is that I feel more valued here and respected than I have ever felt anywhere in my entire life, work wise. And so I just want to say that, like, the stories that I'm about to tell are clearly not my current company. That, I think I have blossomed and grown so much into myself and found my voice at my current company, thanks to my manager that I had for the last 8 years and my office manager too, because they encouraged me to speak up, to share my thoughts, to share my opinions. Whereas at my previous workplaces, we won't say where exactly, that I would be told to come join a meeting, but to stay quiet and to not talk. The other person on the other end of the line had no clue that I was there. I would write things on a piece of paper and push them over to my manager because I was supposed to be behind the scenes and not known. I was also criticized for the way that I sat at my desk and told that I needed to sit more like a lady, and that I needed to work on my feminine qualities. And that, yeah. So it was just, there was a lot of things that were heavily gender discrimination early in my career, but being someone trying to just stay afloat and do a good job, I didn't necessarily recognize them as gender discrimination at the time. I had a very high up person in one of my previous companies wait for me first thing in the morning, call me into his office and tell me how no one liked me, and that they didn't like working with me, and that I needed to work on my soft skills, that I was abrasive to everyone I worked with and interacted with. And I haven't changed a whole lot. So, I mean, me today is very similar to me back then. And it was just trying to stay quiet a lot of the time. And kind of similar to Kristina, I just kind of put my head down and just did the best work that I could possibly do and tried to hone in my skills and to try to prove myself through my work, because I didn't feel like I should have to prove it in any other way. That if I did my work and I excelled at it, then that should speak for itself. I also faced challenges there that one of my previous managers, he would fight me on it, didn't want me to use the software. I wasn't allowed to use the features that I knew how to use, such as feature lines and things like that, that he wanted me to hand draw polylines as contours, because that's what he knew. And so we fought on that too. And we were essentially in mediation with our HR department. And after a period of time, I asked to be switched departments and I was turned down. So I ended up leaving. And it was the best thing I could have possibly done for myself, because, as I said, my current company has just embraced me, and really, I've never felt that they saw my gender here, that they saw me just
And
as
that's
a
how it should be.
designer.
That's
Yeah,
exactly how it should be. And I
yeah,
couldn't agree with you more about how, I mean, I obviously being a male, I cannot visualize or realize how you must have felt at that point in time. And
mhm,
for me, I think that's what makes me the most angry about it, is because I sit there and I think to myself, if somebody did that to me, how would I feel? How would that make me feel about my work? How would that make me feel about my professional status and everything else? And one, I think it's fantastic that your company embraces you and treats you as a designer. That's the thing. You should be a designer, an architect. The gender side of it shouldn't matter.
No,
If you're good
at
at what
all.
you're doing, what's the problem? That's my view on it. And one of the reasons I wanted to set up this podcast, and I had a long chat with Jonathan Hand about this before we started recording the podcast and so on, is I'm a massive believer, and I've always believed in this probably since my early 20s, is we should be living in what I call a meritocracy, where if somebody's good at something, you give them the tools to get better at it. And
Yeah.
that's where one of the things that I try and do with my training, I haven't done much training recently, actually. I've been doing lots of other stuff. But one of the things, especially with my LinkedIn Learning stuff that I put out there, is I want people to take that LinkedIn Learning information and go out and empower themselves and become better and do something better, smarter, and quicker. Now, I don't mind if that's a woman who does that, a man, transgender. I'm not worried. I'm just happy that people are learning and empowering themselves. That's my view on it.
And
And
that's what this is all about, isn't it?
yeah,
It's about giving people the knowledge and tools to be able to excel in their own
absolutely. Yeah,
area. Just because I'm teaching somebody and I love the parametric dynamic design, that's like my specialty. I don't want you to do what I did. Go and make your own thing. But
yeah,
here are the
yeah,
tools to help get you there. Now, please give me your
exactly.
Mona Lisa back and let's see what you've done.
Yeah,
That's what it's all about.
yeah.
Knowledge
And
sharing.
what's lovely about that is they'll follow something that you've taught them. And I mean, I've lost count of the number of times I've been in a training room and I've had somebody, and I'm not being ageist here, I've had somebody a lot younger than me that I'm training, and they say to me, but why don't you do it that way? And I'm like sitting there, I'm going, wow, you can do it that way. And I learned something.
Mhm.
And I'm like, that's fantastic. So I then say to the whole class, so and so has discovered this and does it this way, try it this way as well. And then they've got the ability to take their pick of which route they're going to follow,
Yeah.
Well, I always
and
say,
so
uh,
important.
yeah, I was just going to say that I always say that I hope that the way that I've learned from others and they've inspired me, that someday that I can inspire others to come back and teach me,
Yeah.
because I want it to come full
And even if I
circle.
only help one person, that's enough. I obviously want to help more, but if you can
No, I'm totally with you on that. Going full circle and somebody coming back to you and saying, I've learned this. What do you think? And you sit
Yes.
back and you think, that's new and I've learned something from it.
Mhm.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely amazing.
Because I never want to stop learning. I
No,
always have that thirst
no.
for knowledge and I want to find better ways. And if someone
Yeah.
else figures it out, please come teach me. Tell me how
The
you
only
did
the
it.
only problem with me learning at the moment is the toys are just getting more expensive. That's my problem right now.
True.
I keep buying
Yeah.
drones and things like that. Not good. Not good at all.
No, and it's so important to keep learning ourselves. Like just because we're experts in our field doesn't mean we're
Mhm.
not still trying to learn and expand ourselves. So like now I'm full diving into ACC and get the basic. I understand the basics of ACC, but now I'm getting into the nitty gritty because I'm the BIM manager on projects. So I have to do more than just like the designer coming in. And this week alone, I think I've learned like 12 new things.
Mm.
And everybody's like, how are you still smiling? Because I learned something new. And then I actually took something back to my manager. It's like, hey, you were asking me about this. I figured out how to do it on ACC. Wonderful. Perfect.
Yeah.
So the person who's teaching me how to use the software, I was able to come back to them. Just because we're experts doesn't mean that we're not still in the learning seat as well. We're
Oh,
not
yeah.
still the
Yeah.
student in
And
many cases.
you mentioned ACC as well. ACC is such a conglomeration of different products
Yes.
that Autodesk have acquired over the years. So you have things like BIM 360 and so on. All of that is still in there, but it's
Yes.
all under the umbrella of Autodesk Construction Cloud. Things like PlanGrid that they acquired I love Plan Grid. It's an amazing tool. But I think as of, I think it's April, it doesn't exist anymore, but all of its technology is part of Construction Cloud.
Yes.
It's all,
Right.
and that's how Autodesk work. That's their modus operandi. But obviously, this learning thing, and obviously the detractors that I've had over the years, they've molded us, and you'll notice that there's a common theme here. We're all still learning, and we all have that thirst to get better, do more, teach more people. And I
Mhm.
think that's what gives us that fuel to do that.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, we could wax lyrical about that for hours. We haven't got hours. So, one of the things that I want to bring up, obviously, both of you two now are working closely with AUGI. Now, I don't know if Autodesk Legal will chase me about the next statement I'm going to make, but AUGI used to be Autodesk User Group International. That's where the initials come from. And when I was on the board, that's what it was. Things have changed now, and it is just AUGI. That's what it's called, AUGI. And it is probably the biggest CAD and BIM user group on the planet. Now, I was on the board of directors between, I think it's 2010 and 2016. And whilst it was a voluntary role, I loved being part of this massive user group internationally. It was fun. We got trips to San Francisco, went to AU as part of AUGI and everything else. Times have changed, and AUGI has now evolved into this very different animal,
Mhm.
where obviously it's a much more generic platform. It's not tied down to just Autodesk stuff anymore. And you're working with lots of different software applications, different vendors, and so on. And there's a lot going on at AUGI right now as well, with AUGICon as well. So do you want to just let our listeners know, one, what's new at AUGI, any new stuff, and also what AUGI is all about? So explain what AUGICon is, but also explain what you're trying, the ethos of AUGI as well.
Yeah. Hey, Shelby, do you want to start and I'll fill in some blanks? No? All right. So Augie is still a user group, an international user group, but yes, we've evolved past the Autodesk. We have separated. But for the best, it gives our own identity. We now have our own identity, is what I like to see it as. So we've expanded outside of just Autodesk software. We do Bentley, we do BricsCAD, we do, but we also support Dell and HP and apps and different software. So it's really trying to bring knowledge and sharing and information to the community as a whole and not focused in one silo anymore. So with AugiCon 24, which is going to happen on the 25th and 26th of April, we want to showcase that. We have 2 days of live presenters, and there's going to be a total of 9 presentations, but we also have an endless supply of contributions. So because we don't have too many live spots, we're having an open call for podcasts, articles, forums, tutorials, whatever somebody wants to contribute to the larger mass, to the community. They can still support AugiCon 24, and all that information is going to become available during those 2 days. So with those 9 presenters over the 2 days, we also have keynote speakers, we all have roundtables, and then me and the president of Augie, Katie King, we're going to be doing a what's new in AutoCAD and Revit session that we're going to share. So it's really expanding the knowledge base beyond a single platform and bringing in a new group of users. So we're going to, my portion, my passion, and I think I don't know if I can count Shelby in on this, but I think we have the same passion here. We want to go after universities and colleges and the new technologists, the new designers that are going to be coming into the industry, because they're the ones who need to learn what's already been there and then adapt it for the world that they're going to be entering, the design world that they're going to be entering. And then we need their knowledge back. So I want to push for that younger generation. I want to support them because I'm on the tail end. I'm not young anymore. I've got, not going to say a number, but I'm not.
You're a lot younger than me then.
Yes, but we're closer to retirement. We don't retire, we all die in this anyway, but
Kristina, you and I aren't that far apart in age, and I don't consider myself old yet.
I don't consider myself old either, but the kids coming out of school, I'm 20 years their senior. So I want to be there to support them and find their passion, because my passion is not your passion. And that's what we're trying to bring into Augie, a new passion, a new experience for people. So with the AuggieCon 24, we're also looking into a new app, because it's something we've heard a lot from students from the younger generation. They're like, oh, well, how do I find Augie? Where is this? Like, well, you go online. Is there an app? Everybody asks if there's an app. So we're trying to take that insight. We're trying to take that knowledge and transform Augie into what the new generation is looking for. And so Augie's still going to contain the information it did before. It's still going to be this, it's still going to have what you remember, but now it's going to be looking at the new softwares. How can we integrate AI? How can we do software presentations? How can we help educate the mass with passionate and dedicated industry professionals, which is what we're trying to drive towards Augie. Yeah, I think
it's funny you should talk about an app. When I was a director there, we talked about that too. And it's funny you should say that, because what I'm finding now, and you're quite right, is, I mean, my two kids now are 26 and 22, and they live on apps. That's their life. They're on their phone, on their app. I mean, my son is also a part-time DJ, and he's constantly got his phone to his ear, listening to mixes from other DJs to get inspiration. And then he showed me this app where they aggregate all the DJs, and there's all like these little riffs and sound bites that they can drop in and mix, because he's got mixing desks, everything. And we bought them for one of his recent birthdays. And I mean, obviously the music is drum and bass, which isn't really my scene, but some of the stuff that he comes out with, I'm like sitting there and I'm thinking, this is my son. Wow. And he's amazingly creative, but all of that and his creativity comes out of these apps.
And it's so weird how they've evolved, not just our industry, globally, everything. Everybody has been
Everything
changed
has an
by
app.
everything has an app. And so that's something like, we don't want to just create an app so that we have an app. We're looking for something. We did some research on the app that we were going to purchase. Is actually from like Mighty Network. So you can create classrooms. You can have, does anybody here familiar with the BIM Coordinator Summit?
Yes.
Okay. So they run
last year. Yeah.
Oh, did you? Okay. So I'm an ambassador to Canada through them, and we have an app and a website. And so this is you were very familiar with it, with the service then as well. And the way that it's set up is almost, it's conductive to a learning environment, but also knowledge sharing and promotion, but not ad promotion. And that was something that we didn't want. We if we were going to have ads, we want them focused on people who were part of Augie, not just ads coming in from Google.
Yeah.
Or something
Exactly
like
right.
And I was going to say, another thing to remember too is where apps have an advantage, right? So when we're in our normal day work, that a lot of times we're sitting in front of a PC. But if you think about the construction industry, they're needing to plug more and more into what we're doing, what our designs are, getting into ACC. And a lot of times the way that they're doing that from a job site is on an iPad.
Yep.
So they're constantly working with apps. So that's where this also makes it relevant and another community to reach out to and extend ourselves to beyond just what we historically think of as the target audience for Augie.
And Augie's, in the past was user forms, very similar to what Autodesk has going on right now. And that was our focus. We didn't do software knowledge. We didn't do tutorials. If they were, it was in a form format. So we're trying to evolve past that. We're trying to be, we're not trying to be the next LinkedIn Learning. We're not trying to take over like eGlobal Learning. We're not trying to do that. We're trying to bring that information even to Augie, because it's a resource. Everybody's working together. Civil and Revit don't really talk together. And here Shelby is pulling her hair out, trying to figure out how to coordinate her project. Well, that's where these services and these apps can come in handy, because you're going to be able to access users across the globe.
Exactly.
And it is
And
an
it's that
international.
knowledge base, right? It's that knowledge base and that pool of knowledge where you can potentially, I'll be in the UK trying to get some sort of topography in a Revit model, and I'll go, oh, Shelby's over there. How do I get this topography into this? Is there a way of doing it? Is there a workflow? Is there some way of bringing that together?
Yeah.
And I think that's really important.
Yeah.
And
And AUGI isn't focused on one software either. So that's something that's nice, because there is collaboration across platforms.
exactly.
You
And
can work.
we've got to realize as well, and this is something I learned very early in my career, you have to be vendor agnostic, because one of the first big projects I worked on was Heathrow Terminal 5. I was working on a lot of the reinforced concrete drawings. We were using, would you believe it, AutoCAD. We were using a plugin called CAD's RC, who were a Autodesk developer piece of software for reinforced concrete. We were using Navisworks. We were using ProjectWise by Bentley. And it was, you know, totally cross-pollinating all of this information, because each individual stakeholder worked a certain way.
And if you're
You've
stuck
got
in
to
a
accommodate that.
silo, yeah. But when you're
You've
in
got
that
to accommodate
silo,
it. You can't restrict it. You can't sort of say, oh, we're going to build a massive airline terminal and we're going to use AutoCAD. It's like, no, you can't do that. You cannot do that. And what I think is really important is, I think all of the big CAD and BIM vendors now have realized that we've got to talk to each other. I mean, if you go and look in just AutoCAD now, there's a really common point there. You can export out as a DGN. And you can bring a DGN into AutoCAD.
I was going to say, I don't know if you know this, but we're exploring different workflows right now that we're hosting DGNs and ORD files on ACC. That you can open them. Yeah, you can open them up and look at them. And,
you need that interconnectedness, which software developers are starting to learn.
You've got to have a mesh where everything ties together. Now, obviously, there's going to be pain points with that. There's no doubt about it. There always will be. But I think we're at a point now with technology, AI, developers especially now are way more capable than they used to be. And they're using all these different languages, Python, Dynamo, everything else. I saw the most amazing video the other day. Somebody was creating AI scripts for Dynamo. Yes. And I was like, that's genius. Absolute genius, because Dynamo in itself is a fantastic product. And you can just throw those into Revit. But if you've got AI doing all the hard work for you and you just put the routine into Revit, it's saving possibly months of work. Yeah. Especially on the larger projects.
And that's something that, or at least my focus with AUGI, is bringing attention to that interconnectedness, because AUGI used to be Autodesk User Groups International. So what was our focus before? It was very Autodesk focus. That because we were their partners. We were in a relationship.
How it was when I was there. That's how it was when I was there. It was all Autodesk.
But that's not how reality. That's not how our world works. That's not how our industry works. So bringing attention to yes. And that's what we want to showcase, or at least that's my intention with AUGI. And every person on the board might have their own goals and expectations, but I try to stop and think back to when I was younger, because I can still remember what that was like. And I was, what were my problems? What did I have issues? I didn't feel like I had the support, because 25 years ago, we didn't have good user forums. We didn't have good knowledge sharing. We didn't have good tutorials. Nobody was making tutorials. My AutoCAD book was like this thick. And I had sticky notes and highlights everywhere.
Yeah, now I've still got those on a bookshelf.
Yeah.
So I've still got those, but I think it was one of the it was part of Wiley Publishing. I can't remember the name. Cybex. Okay. The big old Cybex AutoCAD Bible book thing.
We might have had that. Well, maybe not the same one, but yeah.
But so, it was I think it was probably around AutoCAD 2009. I bought one of those. And like you say, I was in it with the highlighter pens, the little post-it notes, everything.
Yeah. And if somebody came by and made you mad.
I was going to say another thing just to highlight about AUGI is that it's not software vendors. It's not, people telling you what to do. The tagline of AUGI is users helping users.
Yep.
And so it's regular
Remember it
designers.
well.
Yeah, it's just, designers just like yourself who are there on the other side, who are trying to help you. So
That's
it's not.
that's what it's
That's
all about,
important.
though, isn't it?
Yep.
I
Mhm.
think the key word in all of this is you're a user group and you're all users. That
Mhm.
and for me, it's one of the things. I mean, it's one of the reasons that I live for AU is I'm bumping into loads of other users and talking to them about stuff that they may struggle with. One of the things that I love now, though, is I'm now part of the Autodesk community. I'm an expert elite. And for me, that is the perfect platform to help other people,
Yep.
to partner
I
up with other
couldn't agree
people and
more.
say, I can help you. I can get you through this. I can
Mhm.
help you with that. And I think that's so important. Now, again, we could wax lyrical about that too. Now, obviously, the podcast is only a finite length. I could talk to you guys for hours, that, and we have done that at AU, obviously
We
last
have.
November. However, obviously, I work in a specific role. Kristina works in a specific role. Shelby works in a specific role. So, and you do lots of different diverse things, but just on a normal working day, and obviously we don't have to go into loads of detail here, but just what do you do on a normal working day? What is your remit when you're at work? You get in, you get your cup of coffee, and then kind of what do you do for the day? Is it so massively diverse that you're kind of bouncing around like a ping pong ball kind of thing? Or is it you are focused on one task, perhaps a project related task where you've got to do something for that day? Just give us a quick breakdown of what you both do and how that breaks down into your working day.
So for me, every day is different. There's no 2 days that are the same. So I'll start off that I said that I am an Autodesk CIM manager, and I'm sure that there's plenty of people out there who are familiar with the term BIM manager, but maybe not CIM. So, BIM is your building information modeling or management, however you want to say the last letter. It goes both ways. And CIM is civil information. So instead of BIM being the vertical plane, I work on the horizontal. I do everything on the infrastructure side of things. So for me, I help with the standards creation. So I'm working on that with my company, creating the templates, upgrading everything from one year to the next. But I have yet to fully move out of the design staff. So I'm still working in production for some projects. So I'm still a designer on some of my projects. So I've got deadlines that I'm juggling. Then I spent yesterday and today in meetings helping to kickstart projects with project teams that are using Autodesk software for the very first time and kind of giving them a rundown of what to expect, how we're going to set things up. I work on the project management side of how to manage that data as well. Like, how are we going to structure it? How are we going to share it? How are we going to, access and analyze it? So it's not just, plugging into a software and going. There's a lot more to deal with it. And it also includes training and meeting with our software support team and establishing different trainings that we're doing and meeting with them and making sure that we're hitting those objectives as well. So it's really up in the air what one single day is going to be. Some days I kind of tune out the world as best I can and just kind of plug and go and just try to crank out as much work as I can, whether that being actually in a production standpoint or if that is more in the software setup aspect. But some days I feel like I don't have a moment to myself, that I'm in meetings from the moment I turn on my computer until well after normal quitting hours, that I just am jumping around, meeting with people, consulting with them. So there's just so much diversity and variation from one day to the next, but I absolutely love it and I wouldn't change it.
Yeah, I was going to say it's. I can remember being a contract CAD drafter for a few years, and it was literally turn up, switch on AutoCAD, draw, switch off AutoCAD, go home. And I
Yeah.
did that for about 6 months on one particular project, and it was soul destroying. It was just, there was no variety whatsoever. And that's kind of why I love what I do now, is like you say, it's every day is different.
Mhm.
So Kristina, I'm assuming your role, your new role, I should say, is pretty varied as well. So please give us a breakdown.
Yeah, so very similar to Shelby's, but being a BIM manager, BIM coordinator. So my official role is BIM coordinator, but I am put on as a BIM manager onto projects. That is the BIM coordinator is like the assistant BIM manager is the way I like to describe it. And I never have one day that is the same, but I thrive on that. So that's cool. That's cool with me. But I'll go days where, like Shelby, you're in meetings from please get online at half an hour before your shift starts. And it's 6 p.m., 7 p.m. by the time you're done. And just because you're helping support people, BIM is like a global umbrella. So that's something that I feel that people don't understand about what a BIM support role is. A lot of people can be in a specific discipline or whatever it is. So I'm in buildings and infrastructure, which is perfectly fine. But BIM really should be like the IT department of a company. You should be outside where you're supporting everybody who needs the help that they require, because I'm the person who specializes in the software that you use. And I'm not focused on one software. So ours is across multiple platforms, which I'm learning. So we got Bluebeam, we've got Navisworks, we've AutoCAD, Revit, Civil, Bentley, Rhino, 3D Max, and you need to understand all of that to be able to support those people. So my day, it just depends on who messages me first. But for the last couple of weeks, I've been doing clashing as well as other things, but clashing takes a long time. I have to set up the environment. I have to make sure the models are in there. It's not just as easy as publish and get it in here. People don't know how to set up their publish packages probably. So, you're helping them through that. Today, I built a Revit family for somebody, helped change some visibility graphics for another person. Honestly, I could never guess what my day would turn out to be. But taking a step outside of my normal role, I'm also implementing standards and foundations for specific disciplines. So right now we have 2 going on. We have one that's going to be for our building sector, and one we're developing for our infrastructure sector. And our infrastructure sector, we're working on the national CAD standard. We're following the guidebook set out by our industry. These are the rules and regulations and layers and standards and everything that you guys should be following. So we're implementing it on that side. But on the other hand, we have some people that are trying to develop their own standard. So I enjoy standards and foundations. I enjoy learning what is required of us and how to implement it. And it's interesting to see it from both sides, somebody creating their own and somebody trying to follow the industry standard. So right now I'm doing some of that, running meetings, training. And before he started recording, I was talking about how I have a lot of very green users in some of my platforms. And I've only been at my job for 6 weeks, but I've been working with those individuals to help them build their skills. I'm not the person who just solves your problem. I am on there with you. You have your drawing and I demonstrate, because with Teams, you can actually take control. So you're still in your
Yep.
file, but I'm kind of just in there, and I don't even, at first I was doing some of the work, but now I navigate. I'll just move my cursor, click this, and then click that, and then I walk them through the next stage. And I've seen some people's skills increase leaps and bounds. So, yesterday I had 2 separate people I've been training over 6 weeks, just to go into their visibility graphics, but the one for a template, for a project template, and go in and change it there, what they didn't even know existed before. And I'm just clapping, and they're like, why are you so happy? I'm like, you should congratulate yourself. You did something that 6 weeks ago, you had no idea it existed. And here you are just trying to show me something, and you instinctively went there, turned off this graphic, came back, and we were looking at what you wanted to see. That is a huge improvement to these people. So what do I do every day? Whatever
Well, there
is
you go.
needed.
You've nailed it. You've absolutely nailed it.
Whatever
Um,
is.
and
I was gonna say,
it's never a dull
Kristina,
moment, is it? I have to
yeah.
agree. It's one of those things, and this one of the reasons that I set up the podcast is to get lots of different diverse people talking about what they do, and just get the world to understand our world our environment and what we do.
And even though it
Now,
might not be the same, what Shelby has to deal with in a day, what I have to
yeah,
deal with a day, and what you do, but there is that common theme. That's what I loved about. I went to a BIM managers meeting when I was at AU, and I thought I had these issues that nobody else was dealing with because the people I was working with at the time were like, well, I'm not experiencing this. It's like, yes, but that's happening. And you show up at AU and there was a room full of people who had
who
had
had
my shared
exactly the same
experience.
issues as you, right?
And all of a sudden it was like a weight. This is 25 years. A weight was lifted. And I instantly felt better after this
Yeah.
one presentation.
All I can say there is welcome to AU. That's what it's all about. That's the ethos of AU.
Yeah.
That's it. Where you just network and talk to people about the same stuff, same pain points. That's what it's all about. Now, we all work in technical roles. We all do technical stuff that involves, as Shelby talked about, maths and all that kind of stuff. And the one thing for me, and I'll joke about this, I turned 55 this year. Technology is moving at an incredibly fast rate. Now, obviously, I've been around the block a bit, and I'm showing my age, as I mentioned, but I often wonder if I'm keeping up enough and I'm
Mm.
keeping abreast of all the new stuff, things like AI and so on. Now, I'm going to say this once, you both have youth on your side compared to me, right? So you can't excuse that. It's true. Okay. But here's the thing. We all have different methodologies of keeping up with technology, learning about technology, and using that technology and using it in our day-to-day roles. So I just want you to both Kristina and Shelby, give us one example of how you keep up with stuff, basically. Go for it,
Okay,
Shelby.
I guess I'm going first. So as you mentioned, I do like to listen to podcasts. So I tend to listen to them a lot, even just when I get ready in the morning. So I've got a speaker in my bathroom, and so I'll turn it on before I shower. So I'll listen to it all morning. So that's why I'm glad to be doing this with you as well, to kind of maybe reach some people as well, to be on the other side of it rather than just the listener. But I like to read articles on LinkedIn. I search things. I read AUGI magazine for one. So just there's so many different sources and so many different avenues in which to access information. And as we spoke about before, it's really that quest of always seeking out knowledge, that you never stop. And I've talked a lot to my current manager that I have now, that, we talk about being expert elites and, being experts in what we're doing. And if we decide to sit back and kind of take a break for 2 years, we'll start to be out of touch.
Mhm.
It's something that you constantly have to work at. Like the software changes so quickly that you have to really be at the forefront of it, and to be playing around with it, testing it, pushing it, seeing all of the possible ways it can be utilized, and hopefully also I don't know about the two of you, but I hope to also help formulate the way it moves forward. That's
Mhm.
an ultimate goal of mine, is to, also influence it.
Mhm. Those are really good points. I really like that. And to kind of piggyback on that, because I don't disagree. I would almost reiterate those same things. But because my passion has always been parametric and dynamic design, that's the precursor to AI technology. Is, somebody inputs some information, you have the scripts that spit out your solution. So I've always been in the mindset, my brain goes faster than I can. So I've always found ways to keep up with it. I get a project and be like, okay, we need to do this. It's like, okay, well, I know there's like these 10 steps. So not just taking the software and using it out of the box, how can I use it to its fullest capabilities, even beyond what was maybe expected out of the software, to solve my problems? Because I would try and automate everything, because I would be thinking too much, that I just needed this task out of the way. You keep going, I'll get back to you when I need to. So that kept me going into what software did I need to use. Honestly, it wasn't what software I needed to use. It was a problem I wanted to solve. And somebody wasn't coming to me, here, automate this. It was like, no, here's your task. And they're like, all right, I'm just going to set up the program that's going to run this. And that's how I kind of approached everything that I did, because I was just so curious about how much more I could do. So like the parametric design in AutoCAD, you know, everybody's like, well, you're drawing the same window. I'm just going to use a window as an example, you know, 1,000 times because it's in different sizes. Like, yeah, why are you doing that though? You could just tell math to do it. Math will do it for you. And so that's why I reached out to Autodesk. Can you guys give me access to AutoCAD without opening AutoCAD? So here we are with this new tool to manipulate a CAD drawing by an outside user. That was never done before, which was a precursor to the parametric inclusion in AutoCAD. So Shelby, same thing. Like, I hope to do something that's going to help push the software forward. And I'm not taking credit for the parametric design in AutoCAD, but I was part of those conversations and got that conversation going within Autodesk. And they had Revit, which had some of that technology, but it was still very limited in the beginning. So helping that technology advance and grow over the years. I also, a lot of people reach out to me for software and like, hey, can you take a look at the software? Because that's who I am online. I'm always writing articles about software and putting them in AUGI or putting them online. So just constantly seeking out solutions. And Shelby, I liked your point where if you just sat for 2 years and you weren't touching anything, that there's no way you'd be able to catch up to where technology has gone to in that time. And people keep forgetting about our industry. We are one of the oldest professions. We've been around for tens of thousands of years. And we only got CAD drawings, a computer help in the 80s, 1988 to be exact, or 86. There's some give and take on that date.
Yeah.
But for tens of thousands of years, our industry was pencils, rulers, and papaya or a rock or paper. We didn't change. And something that I heard at AU this past year was how advanced the manufacturing industry has come in 100 years. Wonderful. I do agree. But step back and look at the AEC industry and how far and how much we've developed in 40 years, because we didn't have the same opportunities. And so all of this has happened in 40 years. Is anything the same as when you started, when your work asked you to go and learn AutoCAD back in the early 90s? Probably not, Sean.
Nope.
It probably doesn't even look, I know the interface is completely different. Were you
I
part
was
of the
using the
Penn?
DOS-based version, so I
Right.
was literally typing everything. We had a thing called a puck, not a mouse, and you
Yes.
move the puck over like this pad, and you
Massive
click the
pad.
puck. Yeah, you click the puck over the tablet, so you'd have the line command and you'd click. And how it worked, I do not know, but yeah, everything was typed in, and you used the puck with the tablet. That was it. That was how it used to
Yeah.
work.
So I've been very lucky that I'm a curious person. You just tell me something, and if it interests me, then I will seek it out. I'm always reading. I'm always expanding. Somebody has a problem. Just because I don't have the software doesn't mean I'm not going to try and find your solution. I don't pick the software. I find the solution. The software chooses me because I don't have control over how to implement that solution. So you have this problem, you have X, and you need Y. Okay, I might need this to solve that problem for you. What is the software? How do we solve the problem? How do I implement it? And that's what drives me to continuously learn. And there's no way for us to know everything. So you'd say, how do we keep up? You never will keep up. And neither will the
No,
next
you won't.
person.
You
And
won't.
neither will the guy that's about to graduate from college. But are you passionate enough to keep going and to keep learning and to keep expanding?
Yep.
And that's
I
what
mean,
you
that
need.
for me, it's that inquisitiveness and just going, why is that doing that? And when it does
That's
that, why does it end up there? And all that kind of stuff. That's
that's
kind of how it works. Now that
yep.
leads on to kind of my next kind of question in inverted commas. Obviously, we're expert elites, so we're meant to be inquisitive. We're meant to be the experts, so to speak. Now, I specialize primarily in AutoCAD and Revit. And these have always been my tools of choice, primarily because of the industries I've worked in. And also, more importantly, there's a lot of other CAD and BIM applications out there. And the reason I want to ask this is, obviously, you've mentioned your typical work days. And, like I said, I worked on Heathrow Terminal 5 and there was lots of different software applications in use. And it was a very kind of granular environment where there was lots of different things changing hands, lots of different types of documents changing hands. Now, I'm sure you utilize a lot of different products, and some of those are obviously going to be Autodesk products. We've talked about AutoCAD, we've talked about Revit. But are there any other, and I want you to give me your top two applications, both of you, that you might use on a regular working day? Now, this might even reach out to something like Outlook or WhatsApp, or what other kind of applications do you use that are your go-tos on a daily basis?
So
Uh,
I guess I'll go.
yeah.
Go on then. Go
But
for it, Shelby.
so my main and primary program is Civil 3D. So being in the more infrastructure side and site design specifically, I work with Civil 3D, and that is my main and primary program that I use and I love and I know intimately, shall we say. But I also work on ACC, but in my opinion, ACC isn't as well suited to the horizontal plane. So in lieu of ACC, we heavily use ProjectWise at my company. So that's the one that I really host everything on, and it works well with the Bentley and the Autodesk users to be hosting their information there. So that's what we use for all of our data management for the most part, and where we keep everything, our structure, etc. So those are the two that I probably work with the most. But definitely Civil 3D is the thing I'm probably in the absolute most, more than anything.
And something like ProjectWise, for example, as well. What we've got to realize here now is the amount of data that we're handling now on a project is exponentially massive as compared to when I first picked up AutoCAD in 1988. The data conglomeration of all the information. I mean, I can remember working on projects where we had probably 50 metal filing cabinets full of folders with all the working documents for that project. Now,
Yep.
that's all in the cloud.
Yep.
Well, and the really positive aspect of using ProjectWise is that we can have other companies built into it, and so you don't have to go through this file sharing via email or other
Yep.
means that you directly link with their information. So if the electrical team that may be a sub-consultant to you, that they've updated their electrical site plan or electrical design in some way, that you're seeing it in real time, that
Yep.
it's not waiting and trying to make sure that they send it to you and, oh, that email got buried,
Yeah.
that it's,
And it's like, oh, I didn't see the attachment.
Yeah.
yes,
Email with an attachment now is old technology.
Yeah.
It
Cloud-based
really is.
sharing has really evolved our cross collaboration capabilities.
yeah, or that they sent an email and then realized that, oh, wait, I made this change. Here's the second one. And
Yeah.
that you saw the first one, not the
Oh,
second
yeah.
one,
Yeah.
because how many times has that happened in the past?
Yeah.
So it's just, and not only that, but especially with the whole pandemic. I mean, we can't ignore that happened. Although I feel like I lost 3 years of my life.
Oh,
That
couldn't agree more.
yeah, like I said the other day, I'm like, I feel like 2020 was actually a year ago, not three. What happened? I don't know. It just passed by. But that prior to that, I think that there was a lot of server use, within the company. And so when we all started working from home, there was the remoting in and like accessing that. So it's pinging into a server, into an office. And so trying to work in Autodesk files, and I mean, I guess it goes to Bentley too, but I'm not a Bentley person, that it was so slow to react. And so using ProjectWise, using ACC, and ironically, I actually embraced ACC first and then found ProjectWise worked better for me. But they're so much faster for the files because you're not going to an office server and then back again, that you're just pinging up to the internet and back. So the response time has just, that is usually when we have the people who are hesitant to change, because we all have those, that, you know, they like the comfort, they like what they've been used to. One of the things that usually sells them the most is the response time when I get them on a cloud-based system for file management, whether that be ACC or ProjectWise. That is almost always the big selling point that makes them actually make that transition.
I can understand that as well. I really can. So, Kristina, what are your two kind of go-tos?
Well, first I'll piggyback on Shelby's cloud-based integration, because back in 2016, I think it was, Google released their beta version of their online system, their Google Docs and their services and stuff like that. I knew this was coming out before it was released, so I put my name in for the beta version, and I got on the first testing team. That was wonderful. Oh man, it was so wonderful. So I actually integrated cloud-based files in 2016, prior to COVID, just within my BIM team at the content aggregation place. So my 2D teams, my marketing managers, everybody else was still on an internal system that I needed a VPN to connect into the network to get their files. They updated it. But my team, I realized that that was not a conductive workflow. So as soon as I got my hands on the Google Docs, because content aggregation doesn't really flow into BIM 360, ACC, and ProjectWise, because I'm just my files for manufacturers. So I was able to integrate a system prior to COVID, that when COVID hit, the rest of our departments were like, what are we going to do? We're not allowed to go into work. It's like, I already have a system working with 4 years of proven success. I was able to change over an entire company in a matter of like 2 weeks to get everybody working online. So that's the power of cloud-based systems and how it's really transformed our industry. That if I had to start it from scratch, probably a month. But the fact that I already had a working prototype and we just had to transition everybody over and get all the content over there, that, you know, I could never imagine what the company's position would have been during COVID if our staff couldn't get access to their content.
Yep.
It would have
No,
been.
I have to agree with you. Something that I've found with things, I mean, even just things like Google Drive and OneDrive and so on, all of that technology now. I mean, one of the things I love is, and not many people know, which I still find amazing, is if you've got an AutoCAD subscription, you've also got AutoCAD Web. So you can use AutoCAD in a browser. You can use AutoCAD on a mobile device. I'm building an office and a workshop right now. I take the iPad out there when I'm working, edit the drawings, and in real time, it's editing the drawing in the cloud so that when I come back into the office in the house, I can tidy that drawing up.
Yeah.
And I mean, whilst that's a very, very basic collaboration with me sort of like 25 meters over there and me here in my office, but if you think about that and make that bigger, and you think there's a remote work site there, there's an office in another city somewhere, you've got real-time communication.
Yes.
Literally real-time communication.
Yeah.
And if somebody had told me that in 1988 that you could do that, I would have just laughed.
I would have. You're
It's
making
like,
this
what,
up.
on a
Yes.
56K dial-up network? How do you do that? You
Yeah.
know, and now we're talking, you know, terabytes of data and gigabytes of internet speed. It's insane. And
It's ridiculous.
it's happening. And I think this leads on nicely to what I want to ask you both next, actually, as well. Is obviously we've all been in the industry for a period of time. Mine is longer, and that's just me being old. But basically, what if you could go back in time to say, I mean, for me, I always joke when I was 21. If I could go back in time to when I was 21, what one piece of advice would you give to yourself?
I would have connected with Autodesk user groups a lot sooner. I thought I was alone. I didn't even understand that I could seek help because parametric and dynamic design, it didn't exist in the software. So I would go to the forums and I would try and find out how to solve my problems, and there wasn't a solution. I didn't realize that I could have started posting my solutions. I didn't realize that
Yeah.
I could have been part of the solution for other people. I kept my own silo, just being naive, not understanding the importance of what I was doing until years later. And realizing that, there were other people suffering like I was, but they were also in the same place. They didn't know that somebody
Yeah.
else was out there looking for it because I wasn't finding the information I needed online. I was creating solutions in AutoCAD that didn't exist. I was creating workflows that people didn't even comprehend because that wasn't how the software was built. And so my younger self, and I've always said this, I would have let myself know that there was a community that could have supported you. And even though you didn't find your support, you'd have started posting your solutions, and then those other people would have come aboard. That old saying, if you build it, they will come. I should have
Yep.
taken that to
Yep.
heart.
The good
I didn't
old
realize.
Kevin Costner Field of Dreams. Yeah, got it.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to kind of quickly go back, because I didn't answer the question before,
Your 2 bits of software. Go for it.
SketchUp. Love
Yeah, that's a good
SketchUp.
call. Yeah.
Love SketchUp, and I use it outside of, this is my passion all the time. Like, this is my hobby all the time. I'm building a Revit app on my own time with a partner. So like this, if you want to know what Kristina likes, all of this, all the time, day, night, I dream it. This is finding better ways to do things, finding solutions to problems, helping people with better workflows, and bridging that gap between disciplines, between industries, between technologies and softwares. That's what keeps me going. And so SketchUp is just fun and easy to use. And it's just, it allows your creativity to come out without that expectation of parameters and reference planes and constraints. You can be very free in your exploration of that program. Google Docs is another huge one because I can reach out to people. I can access it on my computer as well as Autodesk Docs, right? You can
Yep.
not just desktop connector, Autodesk Docs,
Autodesk Docs is great. I often use it.
right? So, my software is not just Autodesk, even though I'm a huge proponent, over 25 years as an Autodesk user. But I understand the world is bigger, and I understand that there's more disciplines. And because I'm in the BIM solutions, I'm not just a Revit person. So, I use a lot of other softwares, but SketchUp is so much fun. Yeah.
Cool. So we're going to loop back round, Shelby.
Yep.
We need to now know what you would tell your previous self. What piece of advice would you give?
So mine isn't so much based upon necessarily software or what we necessarily do now. I think it applies across every industry, that I didn't know it was okay to create boundaries, that to set boundaries and to say, nope, I'm going home. Like, I've had the end of my day. But for years and years, I felt like I let people take advantage of me and my work ethic, and just assumed that that's the way that it had to be. That only within the past 3 years, maybe, that I started creating boundaries and saying, nope, like, you need to have additional people to help if I can't get it done in 10 hours, because I'm no longer going to work a 16 to 18-hour day. Like, I'm not going to work overnight. I'm not going to stay until 5 a.m. So, and I did that. I would work all night and try to get things done. So I think I lost a lot in my early life by not having those boundaries. So I think that would be the biggest piece of advice. And I work with some younger people now, and I really admire them in some ways for the very strict boundaries that they have set. Although sometimes they can be frustrating because they have boundaries and I don't. So I end up doing the work if they don't get it done. But, at the same time, I do respect them for knowing that about themselves already so young in their career.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one. And like you say, that expands across all industries, not just what we do.
Yeah.
I can remember, like you say, I was a CAD manager for a long time. And sometimes there were Fridays where come 5 o'clock, those drawings had to go out. You didn't have a choice. They had to be out by 5 o'clock. And I would sometimes get in at 4 o'clock on the Thursday morning to make sure I was ahead of the game. And
Mhm.
luckily, I mean, when I was a CAD manager, I lived probably 10 miles from the office. It was about a 20-minute drive. So it wasn't too bad. But I had young kids at the time and all that kind of stuff. So from that respect, like you say, those boundaries are really important. And I don't think it matters what industry you're in. And something I've learned, especially over the last, well, since AU actually, when obviously my father had his car accident, I've realized that one, family is really important. And it doesn't matter what anybody says, the work will be there the next morning. But the one thing I love about where I am right now with who I work with, who I deal with on a daily basis, they all appreciate that. And it's like, you don't need to finish that right now. You've got other things to deal with. And I think having that strength of character as a young person, like you've quite rightly said, Shelby, these young people are setting those boundaries now, which means that 20 years down the line, they're going to be part of their psyche, part of just day to day. And I think that's really important. And we've got to a point now, and I think the pandemic possibly enhanced this for me a little bit as well, because I was seriously ill when COVID first hit, and it made me realize that I'm not invincible. You know, there was a moment in my life where I thought to myself, it could have gone one way or the other. And I won't bore everybody with the detail, but I was just seriously ill and it could have gone seriously wrong. It didn't, but it made me realize that there's other things in life as well.
Yep.
There's not just a mouse and a keyboard. There are other things you should be doing. And for me, one of those things, weirdly enough, is pushing a petrol lawnmower in.
I love
I put
mowing the
I put
lawn.
the headphones in, and that's my Saturday morning.
Yep.
I watch a bit of breakfast TV, have the coffee, have the breakfast, get the lawnmower out, get the AirPods in, and I'm off. A couple of hours later, I come in covered in mud, dirt, grass, everything else,
Best
get
day
my
ever.
shower, and it's just therapeutic.
It is. Yep.
That's the thing. And the one thing I would try and get across to everybody listening to this podcast today is you don't have to eat, sleep, and breathe CAD. It's one of the reasons
Mhm.
why I called this podcast Not Just CAD. There's loads of other stuff out there you can do too. And
Yeah.
it's really important. Now,
Yep.
good thing is, no more questions. We've come to the end of our little kind of question flow. So, what I'd like to do is thank both of you for coming along. It's been a pleasure. And it's great to see you guys again as well. Obviously, we saw each other in November last year at AU, and that feels like about 30 seconds ago for me. Um, but I know you're both busy. And the one thing that I really appreciate from everybody that comes onto the podcast is how valuable the insights are that you give. Because what I want to create is a podcast that is just all about people. I don't want to sit there and talk shop all the time. We do talk shop, but we talk around the shop as well. Like
Yep.
Shelby's quite rightly talked about boundaries. That there's all these other things, human things that we do on a daily basis as well. So thank you ever so much for obviously giving up your time, because I know you're both busy. And thank you so much and have a great rest of the week.
Thank
you
you for
so
having
much for
us.
having us.
No
Yeah,
problem
this has
at
been
all.
wonderful.
No problem at all. And hopefully, fingers crossed, I'll see you guys in San Diego in October this year.
I
Yes.
really hope so. That would be wonderful to see you again.
It'd be great, wouldn't it? So take care of yourselves and hopefully see you both soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Not Just CAD, the podcast that covers CAD, BIM, technology, and lots of other not just CAD stuff. Tune into the next podcast on all the usual outlets. You can also find Not Just CAD on Instagram and Threads, and you'll find me, Sean Bryant, over on LinkedIn and Facebook. Not Just CAD is the social media outlet of CAD FM Consultants. You can check out the Not Just CAD blog at www.cadfmconsult.com.